Jack Morgan adjusted his microphone, the spotlight casting a harsh glare across the stage. The room was packed, a sea of faces eagerly waiting for the man they hailed as the voice of the people. Jack stood at the center, an unlikely hero dressed in jeans and a faded leather jacket, his sharp wit ready to slice through the noise of a chaotic world. "Good evening, folks," he began, his voice carrying both charm and defiance. "Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Or should I say, the government in the room?" The crowd erupted into laughter, a collective release of tension in a world growing increasingly oppressive. Jack's humor wasn't just entertainment. It was a mirror reflecting society's flaws. His comedy special, Truth Hurts, had skyrocketed in popularity, turning him into an overnight sensation. His jokes about corruption, surveillance, and political incompetence resonated deeply with working-class Americans who felt ignored and marginalized. But fame came with a price. Jack's rise to prominence had caught the attention of more than just fans. The government, already on edge from growing civil unrest, viewed his routines as dangerous propaganda. His satire, once tolerated, now posed a threat to the established order. The newly enacted Patriot Security Act, a sweeping law aimed at curbing dissent, gave authorities the power to silence voices they deemed subversive. Jack's name was at the top of their list. The controversy reached a boiling point when clips from Truth Hurts went viral. In one segment, Jack compared politicians to magicians. "They distract you with one hand while the other picks your pocket," he quipped, earning both applause and scrutiny. News outlets debated the ethics of his comedy. Some hailed him as a modern-day truth-teller, while others condemned him as a provocateur inciting rebellion. Social media platforms were flooded with hashtags like #LaughterIsLiberty and #CancelJackMorgan. The nation was divided, and Jack stood at the center of the storm. One evening, as Jack sat in his modest apartment in downtown Chicago, a knock at the door disrupted his thoughts. He wasn't expecting visitors, and the sudden noise sent a chill down his spine. He approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. Two men in dark suits stood outside, their expressions unreadable. "Mr. Morgan," one of them called out, his voice steady but firm. "We're with the Department of Homeland Security. We need to have a word." Jack opened the door, his heart pounding. "What's this about?" The agent handed him an envelope. "Cease and desist order. Effective immediately. You are to stop all public performances, including online content. Failure to comply will result in legal action." Jack took the envelope, his hands trembling slightly. "You've got to be kidding me. I'm a comedian, not a criminal." The agent's expression remained stoic. "Under the Patriot Security Act, your routines are classified as dangerous rhetoric. Consider this a warning, Mr. Morgan." As the agents left, Jack stood in the doorway, staring at the envelope. His mind raced. Was this how freedom of speech died? Not with a bang, but with a knock at the door? He slumped onto his couch, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. For years, he had used comedy to challenge authority, to speak truth to power. Now, that very truth had made him a target. Jack turned on the TV, hoping for a distraction, but every channel was the same. Politicians defending the Patriot Security Act, pundits debating whether Jack Morgan had crossed a line, and news anchors warning about the dangers of misinformation. His phone buzzed with notifications. Messages of support from fans mixed with threats from detractors. His social media accounts were filled with comments like, "Jack, you're our voice. Don't let them silence you. You're a danger to society. Shut up or face the consequences. Comedy is freedom. Keep fighting." Amid the chaos, one message stood out. It was from Lucy Carter, an old friend and civil rights lawyer. "Lucy, Jack, we need to talk. Don't make any rash decisions. Call me." Jack sighed, rubbing his temples. Lucy had always been the rational one, the voice of reason. He dialed her number, and she picked up after the first ring. "Jack," she said, her tone both urgent and concerned. "I saw the news. Are you okay?" "Define okay," He replied with a bitter chuckle. The government just told me to shut up or face legal action. Not exactly a great day. Lucy's voice softened. Listen, this is serious. The Patriot Security Act is more draconian than most people realize. They're using it to silence dissent. You're not the first, and you won't be the last. So, what do? Lay low? Disappear? No, Lucy said firmly. You keep fighting, but you do it smart. There's a way to keep your message alive without putting yourself in immediate danger. Jack leaned back, contemplating her words. You have a plan? I'm working on it, Lucy replied. We'll need to move fast. The longer you stay in the spotlight, the more vulnerable you become. Jack exhaled slowly. I never wanted to be a martyr, Lucy. I just wanted to make people laugh. And you've done that, she said. But now, it's bigger than comedy. Your words have power, Jack. People are listening. The conversation lingered in Jack's mind as he lay in bed that night. The world had changed, and his comedy had inadvertently become a form of resistance. He thought back to his father's advice. Son, if you have the ability to make people see the truth, you have the responsibility to do it. The next morning, Jack woke to find his name trending once again. But this time, the headlines were more ominous. Government cracks down on comedian Jack Morgan. Is free speech under attack? Laughter or treason? The debate over Jack Morgan's comedy. Jack stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, his mind made up. He wasn't going to be silenced. He would find a way to keep performing, to keep spreading his message. As he stepped out into the crisp morning air, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The government might control the airwaves and the mainstream media, but they couldn't control the underground. Jack Morgan was ready to take his comedy where it mattered most, in the hidden corners, in the shadows, where laughter could still be heard as a defiant roar against oppression. And so, the journey began. The comedian, once celebrated for his bold humor, now stood on the precipice of a movement he never intended to lead. The stage was set for a revolution, and Jack Morgan was at its heart. The last laugh would be his. Jack Morgan sat at his kitchen table, staring at the cease and desist order, his mind replaying the agent's words. Your routines are classified as dangerous rhetoric. The absurdity of it gnawed at him. How had it come to this? A comedian, deemed a national threat for cracking jokes about the government. But the real question lingered. What would he do now? Jack's phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. Lucy Carter's name flashed on the screen. He picked up, grateful to hear a familiar voice. Jack, Lucy began without preamble. I've been thinking about your situation. The Patriot Security Act is a direct attack on free speech. They're setting a precedent with you. Yeah, I figured that out when they knocked on my door, Jack replied dryly. So, what do? There was a pause. We fight back, Lucy said firmly. But we have to be smart about it. You can't just keep doing public shows. They'll shut you down, or worse. Jack leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. So, what's the plan? I've got a few ideas, Lucy continued. But first, you need to decide, are you willing to risk it all for this? Because once we go underground, there's no turning back. Jack didn't hesitate. I'm in. I've already lost my platform. If they think they can silence me, they're wrong. Lucy's voice softened. I knew you'd say that. Meet me tomorrow. We've got work to do. The next day, Jack met Lucy at a small cafe on the outskirts of Chicago. They chose a quiet corner booth, away from prying eyes. Lucy spread out a map of the city, marking locations in red ink. These are places where we can host underground shows, Lucy explained. Warehouses, basements, private homes. We'll keep it small and mobile. No fixed venues. Jack studied the map. Won't they track us? We'll take precautions, Lucy assured him. Encrypted messaging apps, burner phones, and trusted contacts only. The key is to stay one step ahead. Jack nodded. And the audience? We start with your core fans. People we know are loyal and won't rat us out. From there, word will spread quietly. Jack couldn't help but smile. The idea of performing in secret, like some rebellious troubadour, appealed to him. I always said comedy is a form of rebellion. Guess I'm taking it literally now. Lucy grinned. Let's make sure the government gets the punchline. Their first underground show took place in an abandoned warehouse on the south side of the city. Jack arrived early, helping set up makeshift seating and a portable sound system. The air was thick with anticipation and the faint scent of rust. As the audience trickled in, Jack felt a familiar buzz of excitement. These weren't just fans. They were believers, people who saw his comedy as a beacon of truth in dark times. Lucy gave him a reassuring nod from the back of the room. Jack took a deep breath and stepped onto the makeshift stage. "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady despite the stakes. "Welcome to the most dangerous comedy show in America. Let's hope the feds don't crash the party." The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. Jack felt the tension melt away. This was his element. Standing before a crowd, using humor to cut through fear and oppression. For the next hour, Jack delivered his routine with razor-sharp wit. He tackled the Patriot Security Act, government overreach, and the absurdity of silencing comedians. "They say I'm dangerous," Jack quipped. "Me, a guy who tells jokes for a living. If laughter is a weapon, then I guess I'm a one-man army." The audience roared with laughter, but beneath it was a shared defiance. This wasn't just comedy, it was a statement. Laughter was liberty. After the show, Jack mingled with the crowd. People thanked him, shared their stories, and expressed their gratitude. "You're giving us hope," one woman said, tears in her eyes. "We need people like you to speak up." Jack felt a swell of pride, but it was tempered by the weight of responsibility. He wasn't just a comedian anymore. He was the voice of a movement. The success of the underground show fueled Jack and Lucy's determination. They organized more secret performances, each one more daring than the last. Abandoned theaters, backyards, even a hidden speakeasy. All became stages for Jack's message. But the government wasn't blind to their efforts. At one show, Jack noticed a man in the audience who seemed out of place. He wasn't laughing or engaging with the crowd. Instead, he observed, his gaze scanning the room like a hawk. Jack leaned toward Lucy during a break. "We've got a problem. See that guy in the corner?" Lucy glanced discreetly. "Yeah, he doesn't belong here." Jack nodded. "We need to end the show early. Get everyone out." Lucy sprang into action, signaling to their team. The show wrapped up with a rousing applause, and the crowd dispersed quickly. But Jack couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Back at Lucy's apartment, they debriefed. "We need to be more careful," Lucy said, pacing the room. "The government is catching on. We can't afford any mistakes." Jack rubbed his face, exhaustion creeping in. "I knew this wouldn't be easy, but I'm not backing down." Lucy stopped pacing and placed a hand on his shoulder. "None of us are. We're in this together." Jack met her gaze, gratitude and determination shining in his eyes. "Then let's keep going. They can't silence us all." As they planned their next move, Jack's phone buzzed with a notification. It was a message from an anonymous number. "We're watching. Stop now, or face the consequences." Jack showed the message to Lucy, his expression grim. "They're trying to scare us," he said. "But they've underestimated one thing." Lucy raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" Jack grinned. The power of laughter. They both chuckled, the tension easing for a moment. But they knew the road ahead would only get tougher. The government might have declared war on comedy, but Jack Morgan wasn't ready to surrender. The underground tour continued. Each show a spark of defiance in a world growing darker. And as Jack took the stage night after night, his message echoed louder. Laughter is liberty, and they'll never take the last laugh. The morning light filtered through the blinds of Jack Morgan's apartment, but he barely noticed. His mind was racing with the events of the previous night. The underground show had been a success, But the presence of government agents in the audience was a stark reminder of the dangers they faced. Jack sat at his kitchen table, sipping a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of his phone buzzing on the countertop. The screen displayed an incoming call from Lucy Carter. "Morning," Jack greeted, his voice tired but steady. "Jack, we need to meet," Lucy said, her tone urgent. "Things are escalating faster than we anticipated. The government is ramping up their efforts to shut us down." Jack sighed. "Where?" "There's a cafe downtown. Low profile. Meet me there in an hour." The cafe was quiet, save for the soft hum of conversation and the occasional clatter of cups. Jack spotted Lucy at a corner booth, her laptop open and a pile of documents spread out before her. Jack slid into the seat across from her. "What's the latest?" Lucy glanced around before speaking in a low voice. "They're tightening their grip. The Patriot Security Act gives them unprecedented power to target anyone they label as a threat. And you, Jack, are at the top of their list." Jack leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "So, what do we do?" "We keep going," Lucy said firmly. "But we need to be smarter. They've frozen your bank accounts. They're trying to choke you financially." Jack frowned. "That explains why my card got declined this morning." Lucy pushed a folder across the table. "They've also started harassing your family. Your brother called me. Said there were men in suits asking about you." Jack's jaw tightened. "They're going after my family now?" Lucy nodded. "They want to isolate you, make you feel like you're alone in this." "But I'm not alone," Jack said, his voice resolute. "We've got people behind us. People who believe in what we're doing." Lucy offered a faint smile. "Exactly. And we need to keep building that support." The next underground show was held in a dimly lit basement beneath an old bookstore. The air was thick with anticipation as the audience gathered, whispering quietly among themselves. Jack stood backstage, pacing. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on his shoulders, but he knew he couldn't back down now. Lucy approached him, placing a hand on his arm. "You okay?" Jack nodded. "Yeah, just thinking about how far we've come, and how much further we still have to go." Lucy squeezed his arm gently. "You're doing something important, Jack. Never forget that." Jack stepped onto the small stage, the crowd falling silent. He scanned the room, recognizing familiar faces mixed with new ones. "Good evening, everyone," Jack began, his voice steady. "Thanks for coming out tonight. I know it's risky, but that's exactly why we're here. To show them that we won't be silenced." The audience erupted in applause, the sound echoing off the basement walls. For the next hour, Jack delivered his routine with his signature blend of wit and insight. He tackled government overreach, censorship, and the absurdity of labeling a comedian as a national threat. "They say I'm dangerous," Jack quipped, as if laughter could topple a government. But maybe they're right. Maybe laughter is the most dangerous weapon we have. The crowd roared with laughter and applause, but Jack could see the seriousness in their eyes. They weren't just here for entertainment. They were here for hope. After the show, Jack and Lucy stayed behind to clean up. As they gathered chairs and packed up equipment, Jack noticed a man lingering near the exit. "Lucy," Jack murmured, nodding toward the man. "Do you recognize him?" Lucy shook her head. "No." "You." Jack frowned. "No." But he's not laughing. The man approached, his steps slow and deliberate. He stopped a few feet away, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Morgan," the man said, his voice calm. "May I have a word?" Jack exchanged a glance with Lucy before stepping forward. "Who are you?" The man reached into his jacket, pulling out a badge. "Agent Daniels, Department of Homeland Security." Lucy's eyes narrowed. "What do you want?" Agent Daniels slipped the badge back into his pocket. "I'm here to offer you a choice, Mr. Morgan. Stop these shows, and we'll leave you alone. Keep going, and things will get difficult." Jack crossed his arms. "Is that a threat?" Daniels shrugged. It's a reality check. The government isn't going to let you undermine national security. You've made your point. Now it's time to stop. Jack's gaze hardened. You think you can scare me into silence? I've been doing this for years. I've faced hecklers, critics, and now you. But I won't stop. Daniel sighed. I had a feeling you'd say that. Just know this. Every action has consequences. With that, Daniels turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. Lucy exhaled sharply. They're getting more aggressive. Jack nodded. Let them. We're not backing down. The following days brought more challenges. Jack's social media accounts were permanently suspended. Venues canceled his shows, citing pressure from authorities. Friends in the entertainment industry distanced themselves, afraid of being associated with him. But Jack refused to give up. He and Lucy continued to organize underground shows, each one drawing bigger crowds. They found new ways to spread their message, using encrypted platforms and word-of-mouth networks. One night, after a particularly successful show, Jack sat with Lucy in a quiet corner of a bar. We're making a difference, Jack said, raising his glass. People are listening. Lucy smiled. And they're laughing. That's the most powerful thing we can do right now. Jack took a sip of his drink, his mind drifting to the challenges ahead. The government was relentless, but so was he. They can try to silence me, Jack said, but they'll never take away the power of laughter. Lucy clinked her glass against his. Here's to the last laugh. As they toasted, Jack knew the fight was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, he felt hopeful. The movement was growing, and with it, the promise of a brighter future. The government could try to silence the truth, but Jack Morgan was determined to keep laughing, no matter the cost. The streets of the city buzzed with an undercurrent of tension and hope. Jack Morgan's underground shows had become more than just performances. They were the heart of a growing movement. People whispered his name in coffee shops, passed encrypted messages online, and scrawled laughter is liberty on alley walls. Jack, once just a comedian, had become a symbol of defiance. But symbols carried weight, and that weight was beginning to crush him. Jack paced the length of Lucy Carter's small apartment, his mind racing. The air smelled faintly of coffee and ink from the stacks of documents Lucy had been poring over for days. Outside, the city moved on as if nothing had changed, but Jack knew better. We're reaching people, Lucy said, breaking the silence. She sat at her kitchen table, a determined look on her face as she typed furiously on her laptop. Every day, more join us. Jack nodded, but his expression remained troubled. It's not enough. The government isn't just going to sit back and let us make fools of them. They're going to hit harder. They've already frozen my accounts, shut down my social media. What's next? My freedom? Lucy looked up, her eyes meeting his. You knew the risks when you started this. I know, Jack admitted, running a hand through his hair. But it's not just me they're targeting anymore. My brother called again, he's worried. Said he saw someone outside his house. Lucy frowned. They're trying to isolate you, Jack. Make you feel like you're alone. But you're not. Look around. The movement is growing, and that's because of you. Jack exhaled, sitting down across from her. Sometimes I wonder if it's worth it. I'm just a comedian. I never wanted to be a revolutionary. Lucy's gaze softened. Revolutionaries rarely do. But the best ones are those who fight because they have to, not because they want to. That evening, Jack and Lucy attended another underground show. This one was held in the basement of a dilapidated church, the pews above long since abandoned. The room was dimly lit, the air thick with anticipation. People huddled together, whispering excitedly. Jack stood backstage, adjusting the microphone in his hand. He could hear the murmur of the crowd, feel their energy. These weren't just fans. They were believers. Lucy approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder. Nervous? Always, Jack replied with a chuckle. But it's a good kind of nervous. Keeps me sharp. Lucy nodded. They need you tonight. After the news of more arrests, people are scared. They need hope. Jack swallowed hard. He knew the stakes. Every word he spoke carried weight. Every joke, every punchline was a risk. Stepping onto the small stage, Jack was met with a wave of applause. He scanned the crowd, recognizing familiar faces mixed with new ones. These people had come despite the danger, despite the threats. They were here for something bigger than a comedy show. They were here for a spark of resistance. "Good evening, Liberty Seekers," Jack began, his voice steady. "I heard a joke today. Want to hear it? Here goes." A government walks into a bar, orders a drink, and tells the bartender, "No jokes allowed." The bartender asks, "Why not?" The government says, "Because laughter is a threat." The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. Jack smiled, feeling the tension in his chest ease. "That's what they think," he continued, "that our laughter, our words, our thoughts, they're dangerous. And you know what? They're right. They are dangerous. Because the moment we stop laughing, the moment we stop thinking for ourselves, we lose. But as long as we keep laughing, we win." The crowd's cheers filled the basement, echoing off the old stone walls. Jack could see the hope in their eyes, the resolve in their faces. They weren't just listening. They were ready to act. After the show, Jack and Lucy stayed behind to speak with some of the attendees. Stories poured out. Stories of harassment, job losses, families torn apart by fear. But amid the pain, there was also hope. A woman approached Jack, her hands trembling as she held out a piece of paper. "Mr. Morgan, my son was arrested last week for attending one of your shows. He's just a kid. They're holding him without charges." Jack took the paper, his heart sinking. "I'm so sorry." Lucy stepped in. "We're working on legal aid for cases like this. I promise you, we'll do everything we can." The woman nodded, tears in her eyes. "Thank you. He believes in what you're doing. We all do." As the crowd dispersed, Jack and Lucy found themselves alone once more. "They're counting on us," Lucy said softly. "I know," Jack replied, "and that terrifies me." Lucy offered a faint smile. "Good. It means you care." The next day, Jack woke to find his image plastered across news headlines. "Comedian turned rebel." The face of dangerous dissent blared one headline. "Jack Morgan, threat or hero?" questioned another. Lucy called, her voice tense. "They're trying to control the narrative. They're painting you as a threat to national security." Jack sighed. "Let them. The more they try to silence us, the louder we'll get." Lucy hesitated. "There's something else. We've received an anonymous tip. They're planning to arrest you during your next show." Jack's grip tightened on the phone. "Of course they are. We need to be careful," Lucy urged. "We can't afford to lose you." Jack stared out the window, the city bustling below. He could see people going about their lives, unaware of the battle being fought beneath the surface. "They're afraid of what we represent," Jack said. "And they should be. We're not just telling jokes. We're telling the truth." Lucy's voice softened. "So, what's the plan?" Jack turned from the window, determination etched in his features. "We keep going. We make the next show bigger than ever. And we make sure the world is watching." Preparations for the next underground show began in earnest. The venue, a sprawling warehouse on the outskirts of town, was secured, and encrypted invites were sent out to trusted supporters. Jack and Lucy worked tirelessly, coordinating every detail. The stakes were higher than ever, but so was their resolve. The night of the show, the warehouse was packed. People stood shoulder to shoulder, their faces lit with anticipation. Jack took the stage, the spotlight illuminating him in the darkness. "This might be my last show," Jack began, his voice steady. "But if it is, I want you to remember one thing. They can take our jobs, our money, our freedom, but they can't take our laughter. And as long as we keep laughing, we'll never truly be silenced." The crowd erupted in applause. their cheers reverberating through the warehouse. Jack continued, delivering punchline after punchline, weaving humor with truth. He knew the risks, but he also knew the power of his words. As the night wore on, Jack glanced toward the entrance. A group of men in suits stood watching from the shadows. "They're here," Jack whispered to Lucy, who stood at the edge of the stage. Lucy nodded. "Then let's give them a show they'll never forget." Jack smiled, turning back to the crowd. "Remember, folks, laughter is liberty. And tonight we're free." The movement had become unstoppable. And no matter what happened next, Jack knew they had already won the most important battle. The battle for hope. The city buzzed with whispers of rebellion as Jack Morgan and Lucy Carter planned their most audacious act of defiance yet. The underground comedy shows had evolved into a full-fledged movement, but Jack knew it wasn't enough. The government's grip tightened with every passing day, and he could feel the walls closing in. They needed a bold statement, something that couldn't be ignored or suppressed. And so, the idea of the Capitol Showdown was born. Jack sat in Lucy's cramped apartment, the glow of her laptop screen casting shadows across the room. The plan was simple but dangerous. A secret live-stream comedy show in front of the Capitol building. The government had branded him a threat to national security, but Jack was determined to reclaim his voice. "Are you sure about this?" Lucy asked, her eyes filled with concern. "Once we go through with this, there's no turning back. They'll come after you with everything they've got." Jack leaned back in his chair, a weary smile playing on his lips. "They're already coming after me. Might as well give them a reason." Lucy sighed, rubbing her temples. "This isn't just about you anymore, Jack. It's about everyone who believes in what you're doing. If they take you down, they'll think they've won. Then we make sure they don't take me down." Jack's voice was steady, resolute. "We make this too big to silence." The preparations for the Capitol Showdown began in earnest. Lucy reached out to trusted allies within the movement, ensuring that only those who could be relied upon knew the details. The risk of infiltration was high, but they couldn't afford any slip-ups. Eduardo Diaz, a tech-savvy activist who had helped with previous shows, was tasked with setting up the encrypted live stream. "The government's been monitoring all major platforms," Eduardo explained. "We'll have to create a decentralized network to keep the stream online. They'll try to shut it down, but we'll be ready." Jack nodded. "And the crowd?" "Word's spreading fast," Lucy said. "People are coming from all over the country. This isn't just a show anymore, it's a statement." The night before the showdown, Jack found himself alone on the steps of an old theater where he had performed years ago. Memories of packed audiences and roaring laughter flooded his mind. Back then, his jokes were harmless, poking fun at everyday life. Now, his words carried weight, a responsibility he hadn't asked for but couldn't ignore. Lucy joined him, sitting quietly by his side. "Penny for your thoughts?" Jack chuckled softly. "Just thinking about how much has changed. I used to make people laugh to escape their problems. Now, I make them laugh to face them head on. That's what makes you dangerous to them," Lucy said. "They're afraid of people who can inspire others to think for themselves." Jack turned to her, his expression serious. "Are you ready for this? It's going to get messy." Lucy smiled faintly. "I've been ready since the first time I saw you perform. You have a gift, Jack. It's time to use it." The day of the Capitol Showdown dawned crisp and clear. Jack and Lucy arrived at the designated spot just before dusk, blending into the growing crowd of supporters. The air was electric with anticipation, a mix of excitement and tension. Eduardo gave a final check of the streaming equipment, nodding to Jack. "We're good to go. The stream will be live in 3 minutes." Jack took a deep breath, stepping onto a makeshift stage set up in front of the Capitol building. The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices echoing through the streets. "Good evening, Liberty Seekers." Jack began, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. "I've got a joke for you. What's the difference between a government that fears its people and a dictatorship. The punchline? There is no difference. Laughter rippled through the crowd, followed by applause. Jack continued, weaving humor with biting commentary on government overreach and the importance of free speech. They think they can silence us, Jack said. They think they can take away our right to laugh, to question, to speak out. But here's the truth. Laughter is liberty. And tonight we're free. As the show progressed, the crowd grew larger. People held up signs with slogans like free speech, free people, and laughter is liberty. The energy was palpable, a shared defiance against oppression. But Jack knew the government wouldn't sit idly by. Halfway through the performance, Lucy spotted movement at the edge of the crowd. Jack, she whispered urgently, we've got company. Jack followed her gaze. Spotting government agents weaving through the crowd, their expressions grim. They're here to shut us down, Lucy said, her voice tense. Jack squared his shoulders, stepping closer to the microphone. Looks like we've got some special guests tonight, he said, earning chuckles from the crowd. Welcome, agents. Glad you could join us. Maybe you'll learn a thing or two about freedom. The agents pushed through the crowd, their intentions clear. Eduardo signaled from his position near the stream equipment. They're trying to cut the feed. We're holding, but not for long. Jack nodded, his mind racing. He needed to make every second count. Before they take me away, Jack said, his voice rising above the noise, let me leave you with this. They can take my microphone. They can take my freedom. But they can never take our laughter. And as long as we keep laughing, they'll never win. The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices drowning out the agent's commands. As the agents moved in to arrest Jack, Lucy stepped forward, her phone in hand, recording every moment. The world is watching, she said, her voice steady. Whatever you do, they'll see it. Jack turned to the crowd, raising his fist in defiance. Laughter is liberty, he shouted, the crowd echoing his words. The agents grabbed Jack, pulling him from the stage. The crowd surged forward, their chants growing louder. Laughter is liberty. Laughter is liberty. Eduardo's voice crackled over the comms. The stream's still live. They haven't shut us down yet. Jack met Lucy's gaze as he was led away. Keep going, he whispered. Don't let them silence us. Lucy nodded, tears in her eyes. We won't. As Jack disappeared from view, the crowd continued to chant, their voices carrying through the night. The Capitol showdown had made its mark. The government's attempt to silence Jack had only amplified his message, and the fight for freedom had just begun. The Capitol showdown had ended, but its echoes reverberated across the country. The image of Jack Morgan being dragged away by government agents was seared into the minds of millions who watched the live stream. His message, laughter is liberty, had sparked a nationwide conversation, but now Jack sat in a dim, windowless interrogation room, the weight of his choices pressing down on him. Jack leaned back in the metal chair, his wrists cuffed to the table. The room smelled of antiseptic and stale coffee. A single flickering bulb hung overhead, casting harsh shadows across his weary face. He glanced at the mirror on the wall, knowing full well that someone was watching from the other side. The door creaked open, and a man in a dark suit stepped inside. His expression was impassive, but his eyes betrayed a cold curiosity. He carried a file in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. Jack Morgan, the man said, taking a seat across from him. Comedian turned revolutionary. Quite the career shift. Jack smirked, his defiance intact despite his exhaustion. I prefer truth-teller. Has a nicer ring to it. The man didn't laugh. He opened the file, flipping through pages of transcripts and photos from Jack's underground shows. Do you know how much trouble you've caused, Mr. Morgan? The Patriot Security Act was designed to protect this nation, and you've made a mockery of it. Jack leaned forward, his cuffs clinking against the table. Protecting the nation or protecting the people in power? There's a difference. The man's expression darkened. You've crossed a line. This isn't about jokes anymore. It's about inciting rebellion. You're a threat to national security." Jack met his gaze, unwavering. "If telling the truth makes me a threat, then maybe you should question what you're protecting." The man leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "You've become a symbol, Jack. A dangerous one. But symbols can be broken. You're facing charges of sedition, conspiracy, and inciting unrest. That's a lifetime in prison." Jack's heart pounded, but he kept his composure. "And if you lock me up, what happens? The people who believe in what I'm saying, they won't stop. You can't arrest an idea." The man's gaze hardened. "We'll see about that." Meanwhile, outside the walls of the detention center, protests erupted across the nation. People gathered in city squares, holding signs that read "Free Jack Morgan" and "Laughter is Liberty." The movement Jack had started was no longer confined to secret shows. It was out in the open, a full-fledged resistance against government overreach. Lucy Carter stood at the forefront of the protests, megaphone in hand. Her voice rang out over the crowd. "They think they can silence us by taking Jack. But they've only made our voices louder. We won't stop until he's free." The crowd roared in agreement, their chants echoing through the streets. Lucy knew the risks, but she also knew the power of the people. The government had underestimated them. In the midst of the chaos, Eduardo Diaz worked tirelessly behind the scenes, ensuring that Jack's message continued to spread. The live stream from the Capitol showdown had been downloaded, mirrored, and shared across encrypted networks. Even as the government tried to scrub it from the internet, it kept resurfacing. "We're winning the information war," Eduardo told Lucy during a brief break. "But we need to keep the pressure on. They're scrambling to control the narrative." Lucy nodded. "We need to take this fight to the courts. Jack's arrest is unconstitutional. We have to challenge the Patriot Security Act." Back in the detention center, Jack faced hours of relentless interrogation. The agents tried to break him, but Jack held firm. His thoughts drifted to the people outside, those who believed in him, who were fighting for the same cause. One evening, Lucy was finally granted permission to visit him. She entered the sterile visitation room, her heart pounding as she saw Jack sitting on the other side of the glass partition. Jack picked up the phone, a tired but genuine smile spreading across his face. "Lucy." "Jack," Lucy said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've started something bigger than we ever imagined. The whole country is watching." Jack's eyes softened. "And you? Are you holding up?" Lucy nodded. "We're doing everything we can. But we need you out there. We need your voice." Jack's expression turned serious. "They're not going to let me go easily. They want to make an example out of me." Lucy's jaw tightened. "Then we'll fight them in court. Your case is going to the Supreme Court." Jack's eyes widened. "The Supreme Court?" "Yes," Lucy said. "We're arguing that the Patriot Security Act violates the First Amendment. It's a long shot, but it's our best chance." Jack leaned back, processing the weight of her words. "A trial for freedom. That's what this is." Lucy nodded. "Exactly. And the world will be watching." As news of Jack's upcoming trial spread, the protests intensified. Cities across the nation saw massive gatherings, with people demanding his release and the repeal of the Patriot Security Act. The movement had grown beyond Jack's wildest dreams. In the days leading up to the trial, Jack received letters from supporters, ordinary people who shared their stories of how his words had inspired them to stand up for their rights. One letter stood out. It was from a young man named Daniel who wrote, "Your jokes made me realize that I'm not powerless, that my voice matters. Thank you for giving me hope." Jack clutched the letter, his resolve hardening. This wasn't just about him. It was about all of them. On the day of the trial, the steps of the Supreme Court were packed with protesters. News cameras captured the scene as Lucy Carter led a group of supporters into the courtroom. Inside, Jack sat beside Lucy, his heart pounding. The justices entered, and the courtroom fell silent. As the proceedings began, Lucy stood to deliver her opening statement. This case isn't just about Jack Morgan. It's about the fundamental right of every citizen to speak freely without fear of government retaliation. It's about preserving the very essence of our democracy. Jack listened intently, pride swelling in his chest. Lucy's words resonated deeply, not just with the justices, but with everyone watching the trial unfold. The government's lawyers argued that Jack's words incited rebellion, but Lucy countered with the undeniable truth. Words are not crimes. They are the foundation of liberty. And laughter, as Mr. Morgan has shown, is a powerful form of expression. As the trial continued, Jack realized that this was the moment he had been building toward all along. The fight wasn't just for his freedom. It was for the freedom of everyone who believed in the power of words and laughter. As the court adjourned for the day, Jack turned to Lucy. "No matter what happens, thank you." Lucy smiled. "We're not done yet. The verdict comes tomorrow." Jack nodded, his gaze steady. "Then let's make sure we have the last laugh." The air outside the Supreme Court building was electric with tension and anticipation. Crowds gathered in the thousands, carrying signs that read, "Laughter is liberty" and "Free Jack Morgan." The media frenzy was at its peak, with journalists from across the nation reporting live. This trial was more than a legal battle. It had become a defining moment in the fight for free speech and civil liberties. Inside the courtroom, Jack Morgan sat beside Lucy Carter. His usually confident demeanor was replaced by quiet resolve. He knew the stakes couldn't be higher. The trial was about much more than his fate. It was a referendum on the very essence of freedom in America. Lucy leaned over and whispered, "You ready for this?" Jack nodded, his eyes locked on the 9 justices seated before them. "I've been ready for this my whole life." The courtroom settled into silence as Chief Justice Warren began the proceedings. "We are here today to deliberate on the constitutionality of the Patriot Security Act and its implications on the First Amendment. Let the case of Morgan versus United States commence." Lucy rose from her seat and approached the podium. Her heart pounded, but her voice was steady. "Your Honors, this case is about the fundamental right to free expression. My client, Jack Morgan, is not a criminal. He is a comedian, a man who uses humor to challenge authority and provoke thought. The government seeks to punish him for his words. But in a free society, words are not crimes." The government's lead attorney, Raymond Pierce, stood to deliver his rebuttal. His tone was measured but stern. "Your Honors, the Patriot Security Act was enacted to protect our nation from threats both foreign and domestic. Mr. Morgan's rhetoric, while cloaked in humor, incites unrest and undermines national security. We cannot afford to allow unchecked speech that endangers public safety." Jack clenched his fists under the table. He could feel the weight of every protester outside, every supporter who had risked their safety to keep his message alive. Lucy countered with precision. "Mr. Morgan's words have inspired peaceful protests, not violence. The government's argument hinges on fear. Fear of dissent, fear of questioning authority. But our Constitution protects the right to challenge power. Silencing voices through legislation is a dangerous precedent." The justices listened intently, their expressions inscrutable. Jack scanned their faces, searching for any hint of where they might stand. As the trial stretched into its second day, testimony after testimony was presented. Lucy called Eduardo Diaz to the stand, who detailed the government's attempts to suppress Jack's message by freezing his bank accounts and cutting his internet access. "This isn't just about one man," Eduardo said. "It's about controlling the narrative. If they can silence Jack Morgan, they can silence anyone." Next, Lucy called Mary Thompson, a single mother who had attended one of Jack's underground shows. Her voice trembled with emotion as she spoke. "Jack's words gave me hope. In a world where we're constantly told to keep our heads down and follow orders, he reminded us that laughter can be a form of resistance. It's not dangerous. It's necessary." When it was Jack's turn to testify, he stood with quiet dignity. The courtroom hung on his every word. "I'm not here because I wanted to cause chaos," Jack began. "I'm here because I believe in the power of words. Comedy has always been about holding a mirror to society, about pointing out the absurdities and injustices we live with every day. If we can't laugh at our own flaws, how can we ever hope to fix them?" He paused, letting his words sink in. "The government claims I'm a threat to national security, but the real threat is a society where we're too afraid to speak the truth. Laughter is liberty. It's what keeps us human." As the trial concluded, the justices retired to deliberate. Outside the courthouse, the crowd had swelled to tens of thousands. People of all ages and backgrounds gathered, united by a common cause. The chants of "Free Jack Morgan" echoed through the streets. Lucy and Jack stood on the courthouse steps, looking out over the sea of supporters. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Lucy said, "you've already changed the world." Jack gave a weary smile. "It's not about me. It's about them. It's about all of us." That night, Jack sat alone in his cell, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. He thought of his first comedy gig, of the laughter that had fueled his passion, and of the people who now looked to him as a symbol of resistance. The next morning, the court reconvened. The atmosphere inside was tense, every breath held in anticipation. Chief Justice Warren addressed the courtroom. "The case of Morgan versus United States has presented this court with profound questions about the balance between national security and the fundamental rights enshrined in our Constitution. After careful consideration, we have reached a verdict." Jack's heart pounded in his chest. This was the moment. The Patriot Security Act, as applied to Mr. Morgan, is hereby ruled unconstitutional. The court finds that the act infringes upon the First Amendment rights of free speech and expression. Mr. Jack Morgan is to be released immediately. The courtroom erupted in applause. Jack closed his eyes, a wave of relief washing over him. Lucy grabbed his hand. "We did it." Jack nodded, his voice barely a whisper. "We did it." Outside, the crowd erupted in celebration. News of the verdict spread like wildfire, with headlines declaring "Free Speech Triumphs. Jack Morgan wins landmark case." Jack stepped out of the courthouse to thunderous applause. He raised his hand, a symbol of victory and solidarity. "Thank you," he said, his voice amplified by the crowd's silence. "Thank you for standing with me. This victory isn't mine, it's ours. It's a reminder that our voices matter, that laughter can break chains, and that liberty is worth fighting for." As he walked down the steps, Jack spotted a familiar face in the crowd. It was Daniel, the young man who had written him a letter of thanks. Jack approached him, shaking his hand. "You're the reason I kept going," Jack said. "Never forget that your voice matters." Daniel nodded, tears in his eyes. "And you reminded us all to keep laughing." That night, Jack performed his first post-prison show. The venue was packed, and millions tuned in online. He opened with a simple line that brought the house down. "They tried to silence me, but they forgot one thing. I'm a comedian. I always get the last laugh." The crowd erupted in laughter and applause, a powerful reminder that in the face of fear and oppression, humor remains one of humanity's greatest weapons. As the show ended, Jack looked out over the audience, his heart full. Comedy is more than just laughter. It's a weapon against fear. And as long as we keep laughing, they'll never take the last laugh. The movement lived on, and Jack's legacy was cemented. The fight for freedom of expression had won a crucial victory, and the world was reminded that even in the darkest times, the light of laughter can shine through. The next morning, the entire nation held its breath as the Supreme Court reconvened to deliver the verdict on Morgan versus United States. Crowds filled the streets outside the courthouse, spilling over into nearby parks and avenues. The air was charged with anticipation, and the atmosphere felt more like a historic festival than a legal proceeding. People carried signs with slogans like "Laughter is Liberty" and "Free Jack Morgan," while the media buzzed with live reports from every major outlet. Inside the courtroom, Jack Morgan sat beside Lucy Carter. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing the gravity of this moment. Lucy placed her hand over his, offering a reassuring squeeze. "We've done all we can," she whispered. "Now we wait." Chief Justice Warren entered the courtroom, the room falling into a hushed silence as everyone rose. He adjusted his glasses and took his seat, glancing over the sea of faces before him. "The case before us," he began solemnly, "raises profound questions about the balance between national security and the fundamental rights enshrined in the First Amendment of our Constitution." Jack's hands clenched into fists under the table. He knew the decision today would not only determine his fate, but also set a precedent for freedom of speech in America for generations to come. Chief Justice Warren continued, his voice measured but resolute. "After careful consideration and deliberation, the court has reached a verdict." Lucy leaned in closer, holding her breath. "The Patriot Security Act, as applied in this case, is hereby ruled unconstitutional. The court finds that it infringes upon the First Amendment rights of free speech and expression." A wave of relief washed over Jack as he closed his eyes, his shoulders sagging with exhaustion. He barely registered the rest of the Chief Justice's words. "Mr. Jack Morgan is to be released immediately. The charges against him are dismissed." The courtroom erupted in applause and cheers. Even some of the justices couldn't help but smile at the jubilant reaction. The guards opened the gates separating Jack from the courtroom audience, and Lucy pulled him into a tight embrace. "We did it," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We really did it." Jack nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Lucy, for never giving up." Outside, the scene was euphoric. As the news spread, the crowd erupted into chants of "Free Jack Morgan" and "Laughter is Liberty." People hugged, cried, and celebrated in the streets, knowing they had witnessed a turning point in history. Jack and Lucy emerged from the courthouse steps to thunderous applause. The crowd parted like a wave as Jack stepped forward to address them. He held up his hand, and the chants quieted, the crowd hanging on his every word. "Thank you," Jack began, his voice steady but emotional. "Thank you for standing with me. Thank you for believing that laughter, our most human response to fear, oppression, and injustice, can be a weapon of freedom." The crowd roared in approval, but Jack raised his hand again for silence. "This victory isn't just mine, it's ours. It's a reminder that our voices matter. It's a reminder that they can try to silence us, but as long as we keep laughing, they'll never take the last laugh." The crowd erupted again, their cheers echoing through the streets. People waved flags, raised their fists in solidarity, and continued chanting slogans of freedom. Jack spotted a familiar face in the crowd. Daniel, the young man who had written him a letter of support during his darkest days. Jack made his way through the throng of people, reaching out to shake Daniel's hand. "You kept me going," Jack said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for reminding me why I started this in the first place." Daniel smiled, tears in his eyes. "And you reminded all of us to keep laughing, even when it's hard." That night, Jack returned to the stage for the first time since his release. The venue was packed with supporters, and millions more tuned in online to watch his first post-prison performance. The energy in the room was electric, a mix of anticipation and celebration. Jack stood under the spotlight, taking a moment to soak in the atmosphere. The crowd fell silent, waiting for his first words. "They tried to silence me," Jack began, a wry smile playing on his lips. "But they forgot one thing. I'm a comedian, and comedians always get the last laugh." The audience erupted into laughter and applause, the sound echoing through the venue and spilling out into the streets. It was more than just a performance. It was a statement of defiance, resilience, and hope. Jack continued his routine, weaving humor with powerful social commentary. He spoke about his experiences in prison, the absurdity of censorship, and the importance of standing up for what's right. His words resonated deeply, reminding everyone in the audience why laughter is a powerful tool against fear and oppression. As the show drew to a close, Jack delivered his final message. Comedy is more than just laughter. It's a weapon against fear. It's a way to connect, to challenge, to inspire. As long as we keep laughing, they'll never take that away from us. So remember this. They can try to take our voices, our platforms, even our freedom, but they'll never take the last laugh. The audience rose to their feet, applauding and cheering with unbridled enthusiasm. Jack stood there, soaking in the moment, knowing that this was just the beginning of a new chapter. As he left the stage, Lucy met him backstage with a smile. "You did it, Jack. You've become the voice of a movement." Jack chuckled, a twinkle in his eye. "I'm just a guy with a microphone and a lot of opinions. But if people are listening, then I'll keep talking." Together, they walked out into the night, the sound of laughter and celebration following them like a beacon of hope. The movement lived on, and Jack Morgan's legacy was cemented in history. The fight for freedom of expression had won a crucial victory, and the world was reminded that even in the darkest times, the light of laughter can shine through. The last laugh belonged to them all,